Okay.
Hey everyone, I am so excited to introduce you to Julia Hai today. She's one of our remote yogi tribe members. We met kind of through the blog and have just been chatting and kind of friends ever since, which has been really fun. And I am showing her off today because she's just started her Etsy store for tarot readings online. So if you're like me, you're super interested in all that spiritual stuff and all the fun readings, but it's sometimes hard to actually go someplace in person. So it's nice to have somebody online. She just did mine via Zoom reading, but she does them different ways, I'm assuming. So let's dive in. Julia, tell me a little bit about your new business on Etsy and what got you interested in tarot readings to begin with.
All right. Well, first off, to begin with, one of my good friends actually started becoming a tarot reader when she got a little bit, I guess, kind of emotionally blocked and confused. Like she had a lot of stuff going on in her life at the time. So she actually started doing readings for me at one point, and she kind of started showing me slowly the ropes of doing it for her, and was just kind of like, all right, well, I actually have a decent intuition for this, so let's keep going, let's roll with this. And I started doing it for myself a lot more often, and it ended up helping to clear out a lot of like emotional issues and things like that, because a lot of times if there's something stuck in your head that you just can't get around, if you have that reading, it just puts everything out visually in front of you, and you can look at it and be like, here we go, here's the answer, like
It's
this
kind
is
of
what
like
I needed.
the big picture instead of just focusing on like that one spot in your life, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you get kind of like, you're able to start digging yourself out of your hole a little bit. So that's kind of what's got me started in doing it. And then I was doing it for her more often, and other friends found out that I was doing it, and they were also more into like the spiritual things and like nature. So I started doing it for more of my friends, and found out that like a lot of them, because most of my friends actually aren't around me.
Yeah.
So we usually have a text by like relationship, I guess you want to say. But so I started doing it virtually for them, and figured out that it works pretty darn good. So I thought, why not start a shop and help some other people out too?
Awesome. So for those who have never had a tarot reading, have no idea like what it is outside of like weird movies and a deck of cards, explain how would you like explain tarot reading to like a newbie who's new to the whole spiritual realm?
To a newbie, I would say don't read too much into like your past knowledge of things. A lot of times your knowledge, like a lot of scary movies are just like, oh my God, there was a tarot card in the room. And they're not really meant to be scary. Like, for example, the death card is actually a really good card to get, which is very strange to some people. So you just kind of have to, as long as you have an open mind, things will be fine and they'll work out, and like you'll be able to get something from the reading.
Mm-hmm.
If you're blocking yourself and you just kind of don't want anything to do with it, and you're just doing it to be like, meh, whatever, then sometimes you're not really going to get much out of it. But it's kind of, it is what it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be set in stone, like this is going to be your future,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just usually something where you can help set out a problem and see if maybe there's a solution to help you out.
Well, and the thing I like about this and kind of anything spiritual is it's really like as much as you want to put energy into it. So it's like people are asking me all the time, like, well, do crystals really work? And I'm like, well, if you believe they work, then they do. So I don't know if that answers your question at all, but it's kind of the same thing with astrology or tarot reading. It's like, well, if you believe it helps you, then it will. If you don't, then it won't. So,
Yes,
there's no,
that is
no
exactly
better way
it.
to
And
explain
I'm not gonna
that.
lie, I have crystals out while I'm doing my readings because they kind of help clear me out. So
Yep, keep you
it kind
grounded and also dreamy at the same time. Yeah, like everyone made fun of me. I traveled with crystals all year and they would be out, and I'm like, um, it's fun.
Yep, I always have them out. They help me just chill.
Yeah, so
It's
and we did a fun reading like just now via video feed, but she also sent me text pictures of the tarot cards, so I can throw these up on the blog. It was really fun because we went through it and she was like, I don't know what's happening here. This is so confusing. And then as she was reading things out to me, I'm like, oh, actually, that's not very confusing because I know exactly what that means. And that was really fun to kind of bounce back and forth with you on some of those cards, but also to know that like it's all interpretation. So like I'm not reading too much into any of this. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, this is like a good guide of like potential what could be. But
Exactly.
it's fun. Like I enjoy it. Like I'm like, this is some good guidance. It's telling me to follow my intuition, like I have been telling myself for 6 months. So, universe is raining signs at you regardless of how it comes, right? So
Exactly. That's what it's here for. It's just here to be like happy, like kind of like, okay, here's what it is. Take what you want from it.
I
So
love it. Love it. So in
yeah.
regards to other kind of spiritual stuff and whatnot, like what got you started? I know that you now are doing yoga with me and other kind of meditations and different things. What got you interested in that whole world?
A lot that got me interested at first was honestly my mental health. Because it completely honestly, if I miss a day of yoga, I can tell just in the way my brain is reacting and everything.
Mhm.
Because I am bipolar, which it gets confusing because it means different things for different people. But for me, it means my head can get just crazy crowded and I can't separate all of my thoughts sometimes. And it's very difficult to kind of get everything straight so I can think properly about each situation and just really know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing yoga, if I'm doing meditation, it helps to really clear my head out and it helps me to be able to focus on that one thing at a time and just take things easy and not beat myself up basically if I can't really figure my way out of a situation. So that was kind of my main inspiration. Actually was told to me to do by my counselor. Like I did it years ago and it helped and she was like, "Well, why aren't you doing it now?" So
Kind of
it
circle
got me
back
thinking
around
back.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and it was really fun because the way we kind of were introduced to each other, like not even knowing I do yoga or any of these things, was my blog post a while back when I got the dark mark tattoo, which
yes.
is kind of an introductory story of my kind of battle with depression and kind of the symbolism for me on kind of getting through it, but also knowing that this is still part of me and my journey. And you reached out because you were inspired by that, and we just kind of started bouncing back and forth. So tell me a little bit more about like finding that article and how this kind of friendship developed.
In all honesty, I ended up finding it because I started reading because I'm obviously very much obsessed with Harry Potter because I don't, I'm just a nerd.
Yeah,
So
we love it.
I am a book nerd and it's one of the genres that really hits home. I grew up with it. So, um, but I've been rereading it a lot lately because every time I do, I get something more out of it. And I
Yeah.
started reading some fan fiction that was actually going really in canon, like keeping with the stories that gave you kind of a little more insight on Draco Malfoy and what he
Mhm.
was kind of going through. And he was never one of my favorites, but with a lot of the mental changes that have been happening with me over the past few years, I kind of started understanding his side of the story more
Yeah.
and kind of like started really realizing, okay, he was just kind of like pushed into this. Like these weren't necessarily his choices. He was making the best of what he could out of these situations. So very similar to when you end up having a mental illness. This is what you've got. You have to make the best of what you're given.
Mhm.
So that kind of really got my gears going. And I was like, you know what? Now I understand why some people get the dark mark tattoo. And so I started looking for good images of it to try and figure out like, okay, what could I show to a tattoo artist? Because like, obviously like
We're
not my
not
first
shy on tattoos.
um, so your blog actually ended up having the best image of the mark that I could find. And it led me to that when I went to screenshot and I ended up being like, what is this? And in reading it, your explanation of everything you had gone through really hit home with me because I had gone through a lot of the similar situations, just in general past relationships, in discovering the mental illness, in trying to work through it, just different things that have happened in your past. And at the end of it, you like, reach out to me if you need anything or if this like touched you in any way kind of thing. And I was just like, you know what, like this hit home hard. And so I had to just email you and be like, you know what, I don't even care if you respond or not, but I just want to let you know, like, you totally made a difference in my life by telling all of their story out here because I definitely relate and you're awesome. So
And it was like the best email. I was so excited. The cool thing is like as light workers, like we are always kind of giving and putting ourselves
Mhm.
out there, but not very often do people actually come back to us and say like, wow, that was really, really touching. And so like, and people would assume that we get that often and we don't. So it's really helpful. It keeps us going when people reach out and they're like, this helped me in this way. And I'm like, praise the Lord, it hit home with somebody. Like, yes, thank you. So that's awesome. Because that's also
Okay.
why I got it. They always say, get tattoos in a place that's very publicly seen if you want to talk about it, or get it somewhere private if you want it more for yourself. And I put it on my, front of my arm, like, yes, please ask me about this. I'd love to have a conversation. So it's nice when I actually get to do so, or
Yeah,
just gloat about fun Harry Potter stuff. So
right? 'Cause when is
yeah,
that not fun? I
yeah.
mean, let's.
And since kind of connecting, we found like more things we connected
Yeah.
on and different things. I found out about your tarot reading, which was awesome. So tell me about what intrigued you about joining the Remote Yogi Tribe, like our online membership.
Honestly, from that, just between like becoming friends with you more so after talking a lot about like the dark mark and just kind of getting to know each other after that, I started looking more at your style of yoga, and I signed up to do the 14-day trial first,
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of like get my gears going and be like, okay, this is something where it's kind of a challenge, so I can make sure that I'm doing it every day and it's like giving me that purpose, because I tend to need to have a reason to do something. Like, all right, let me lug myself out of bed because I have to do this. Otherwise, I'm going to miss a day and I'm just going to hate myself for it.
Right.
So,
Or if somebody's like holding you accountable, like,
exactly.
gotta
I
do
like accountability partners, 100% need one.
it.
Thankfully gave me, and she's been awesome. But, so I started with the 14-day trial, and just your style of yoga, how it's a lot more loose and kind of interpretational, and it's not like here is a rigid stance, go from this rigid stance to the next rigid stance to the next rigid stance, just like robotic. Because I mean, while that's helpful and it helps you learn the poses and kind of start to understand what goes on, you're kind of like talking everyone through it, and you're like, you know what, you can do this if this pose is a little difficult for you, or you can do this. And then you have a lot of like, all right, let's loosen up, we've done a lot of work here, let's loosen our limbs up, do these things. And you just kind of have a nicer rhythm, I guess is the way to put it.
I'm very flowy and dancey with my practice.
It is. And
Yeah.
it totally, like, I'm like, yes, I like this. This is my favorite that I've done so far, because I've used like 17 different yoga apps at least.
Wow. Wow.
And yeah, it's
That's a huge compliment.
like, yeah, it's, most of them have been a bit more rigid. I found like one that was slightly fluid, but nothing as fluid as yours. And it kind of made me feel better, because then instead of being like, here's a very instructional thing, this is what you have to do, you're kind of like, dude, it's cool. Don't be hard on yourself. Like, you gave the mantra for the day, which I love, because none of the other apps that I have used have given you a mantra for the day. None of
Well,
them.
so the reason I kind of started the program is a couple things. One was I was trying different yoga things. Even as a teacher, sometimes it's just nice being guided, right? Like I don't want to have to think through a practice every day. And I found that it was very focused on the asana. So if you know anything more about yoga, asana is just the movements. It's like the physical workout yoga kind of thing. And
Mhm.
that's pretty much almost all online yoga practices are based around
Yeah.
that. Like it's all fitness focused or physical focused. And so mine was
Yeah.
like, okay, how can we take some of these mental practices, like mindset practices that are such a huge part of the yoga lifestyle, and implement them into what I do? But also, how can I make me more accessible to my students? Because in all of those apps, like you don't communicate with the teacher, like it's just this random person, and they might be celebrity yoga teachers, but if you don't get to connect with them, I just felt like very blocked, in that kind of energy.
Yes, that's 100% it. Like, you have like, here's a picture showing you how to do this pose, do it. And you're more so like, okay, if I'm doing my shavasana, I want to be able to like have something to kind of like focus on, just to kind of like cool through my mind and everything. And you're like, you've got your mantras. I love the "you are a badass" one. That is one of my favorite ones to go through.
Not very conventional, that's for sure.
Yes. Oh, you're a beautiful badass. And that is your mantra throughout the day. Because sometimes you just need to remind yourself you're
Yeah.
a beautiful badass and you can do whatever you want to do. And a lot of yours are focused as well on like, don't feel guilty and things like that. Like, so that helps a lot mentally wise for me too, because it's very easy to be like, this is going wrong and that's going wrong and that's going wrong. Whereas, you know, if you're doing your practice and you're thinking like, you know what, shit happens and it's, it's how it is, but stop putting all of the pressure on yourself because it's not just you. Like
Yeah.
you don't control everything. So being
Awesome.
reminded of those things and having that kind of easier flow, like it makes a huge difference.
Yay. And then you're trying some of my vegan recipes, it sounds like.
Yes. Oh my God. Which I love because I got actually kind of attacked by my own cat um, a few months ago. And one of the several antibiotics I had to be on made you like, it's like has potential to make you lactose intolerant just while you're taking it. But there's a 1% chance of person that you could become lactose intolerant permanently. And I became one of that 1%.
You're unique.
Apparently I'm unique in all medical regards when it comes to side effects. But no, it made me realize that basically 90% of my diet was dairy, which is really unhealthy. And diet, like especially for being bipolar, has a huge impact on your mental state.
Yes.
Like diet, eating regularly, if I don't have my 3 meals a day, if I'm not eating healthy each meal, my brain can just be like, no, we're not functioning today. So like following your recipes and having something that's like a weekly, like, okay, here we go. You have something to follow. Let's do this. Like, it's kind of like, okay, I don't have to sit and stare at my fridge and be like, I can eat an apple.
Yeah.
So that helped a ton.
Good.
A ton.
Awesome. And I'll just touch on one last thing because you've got to go eat your strawberry rhubarb pie. I just saw you pull out of the oven. That looked amazing. The last thing was the accountability partner. You kind of touched on it earlier, but the cool thing was I'm always, my biggest thing is trying to serve you guys as best I can, and sometimes it just doesn't work where I can give everything. Like we talked about doing some private coaching, and just sometimes finances aren't there, and I'm like, that's cool. Like how else can I help you? And so I came up with this accountability partner situation where you could partner with somebody else in the group who was looking for some similar help, where they're like, hey, I need somebody to make sure I'm doing my mindful mornings, or somebody who's asking if I've done yoga this week. So tell us how that's working out.
Oh, it is fabulous. You are very good at people matching.
I'm like a matchmaker for yogis.
Right? Oh my gosh, it's great because she actually ended up having a lot of the same qualities as one of my best friends. So I'm like, we're good. Love this right out the gates.
Awesome.
So it's been great because we're able to check in with each other, not even just on like yoga practices and like making sure, okay, you're doing what you need to do for your mindfulness every day, but you also kind of like, you develop that friendship where it's like, hey, is everything else in your life going on all right? Like, what are some other factors that are affecting you today? Like, you end up really getting to know the person, and it ends up kind of helping you balance out too, because you kind of help each other like, hey, you know what? I know this happened in your day. Like, let's make you feel better about it a little bit. Like, some of this stuff isn't your fault. Just roll with the punches kind of thing. So
Right.
it ends up being good. And then you can also like refer them back to the yoga and the mindfulness to be like, all right, you're having like, I see where your head's at today. What if you just did like a quick 10 minutes of just like meditating real quick and just letting it all go?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it helps to have that reminder.
And then it has the community too. Like, somebody else is out there who's kind of doing the same lessons you are, and they're discovering things with you, and that makes it fun. You're not just like, hopping on an app by yourself. There's somebody else around the world who's
Exactly.
doing it with you, and that's fun.
And it's like the Facebook group too. Like everybody's always posting something that's like, hey, you know what? Let's be super positive. And it's, I'm sorry, but what Facebook group do you have that where everyone is being positive to each other? What? Like,
Yeah.
there's very few online communities where everyone is just like, let's help each other out. Let's do this. You've got this. Life is going to be okay. Like,
I know,
sure.
because you were reluctant to get on Facebook. You're like, oh, I don't really do the Facebook thing. And I'm like, oh, it's worth it. I promise you this group is worth it. They're amazing. So.
It very much is, because I have been fading away from the Facebook scene just because everybody was, I'm just like, I can't handle you anymore. Because
Yeah.
everybody's at each other's throats about one thing or another. But it's the one place where it's like, all right, I have my Harry Potter Facebook page and I have my Facebook page. We're good.
Perfect. Awesome. And so if anyone wants to connect with you, because I already mentioned your awesome Etsy shop, you're also doing a blog. Tell us a little bit more about the blog and where they can find you online.
Online, it's a Wix site blog. I don't know if the easiest way to go about that.
I'll post it in the blog right up.
All right. But yeah, it's basically because in talking with one of my counselors, we were figuring out that I kind of box myself. So it's like whoever I'm around, or if I'm not around anyone, like I box myself in certain categories. So if someone needs me to be like, if my family needs me to be person type B, then I will be that person around them. And if I'm not around anyone, then I kind of end up just being my symptoms of bipolar and everything. So she's like, you realize like your symptoms don't define you, right? Like this isn't you. You are a person outside of all of this, and you can do whatever you want to do outside of all of these things. Mm-hmm. So it kind of like made a little thing in my brain snap, and it was just like, holy crap. Well, if I'm not defined by these things, and if I'm not putting myself in these boxes for other people, who am I? So it might seem kind of silly, even though like I'm just putting out random facts about myself here and there, like on one of the pages.
Yeah.
But being able to do that and writing about like certain things that I'm figuring out every day, and making myself go slightly out of my comfort zone every day just to figure these things out, to be like, okay, you know what? I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. This is why. Like, or yeah. This has really helped me in my life. Like tarot reading is mentioned, gardening is mentioned, yoga is mentioned. It's like good and bad things, yeah. But I'm figuring out who I am just as a person on my own. Like, and it's just kind of like
the world kind of see that process, which again is so helpful, because yeah. I have a huge following of people with any kind of mental illness, whether big or small, and having people out there to be like, okay, they get it. They exactly know what I'm going through. That's what we're here to do, is kind of shine that light for other people. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So it's a lot of that. And it's also a lot of people who I have grown up around, because I haven't really been able to move too much outside of the community that I grew up in. Mm-hmm. And when I first started writing different pieces, and I got one of my first pieces published online, it had a very mixed review because a lot of people didn't see that side of me. They saw the box section. Yeah. So this is kind of me being like, all right, well, you guys have known me forever, but you haven't known me as this person. So here's my way of saying, this is me. If you're cool with that, great. If you're not cool with that, we can distance ourselves if you need to, but here you go. Like,
and that's just all about living in your authenticity. And that's kind of what I preach all the time too, is when your different personas and your different kind of characters that you play to be around certain people, when that stops feeling like different people, and that can start to mold into kind of this blended person that's kind of a mix of all these people you try to be, that's when you're living in authenticity, right? Like that, I'm still figuring that out, you know, how I present myself in a certain professional setting versus at home, or trying to blend that is constantly a battle. So I think that's something everyone can relate to. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to post a link to your blog and a link to your Etsy store so people can get on. She's doing an awesome introductory rate right now for her like 3-card readings, $5 only. So get on before she increases the prices because she'll be in demand soon. I just know it. So get on there and check it out. And if you guys have any questions about the tribe or anything we talked about, reach out to me. Julia, would it be cool if I dropped your email in the blog post as well for
Yeah.
people to reach out?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cool. So if you got questions, if you want to chat with somebody else who's maybe going through the upside of bipolar or, on the other side of things, she's awesome. I'm here to talk to you too. So never feel like you're alone. You've got people out there who are rooting for you. So awesome. Anything to add?
You guys think got it all, girl. Like
All right.
just don't feel guilty or don't feel weird about reaching out, because I think that was one of my things that I said to you like in our first email. I was like, this might seem totally weird and out of the box, sorry, but don't apologize for needing someone to reach out to. If you're going through shit, we're here.
Yep. We're all going through shit too also. So,
Yes,
never alone.
everyone constantly is.
Awesome.
So
Well, thanks again. Hopefully people get a ton out of this. If you've got a question, please comment or email us. We're here for you guys. But we'll see you guys again soon. Or maybe in the tribe. You can hang out with me and Julia in the Facebook group. All right, bye, everyone.